Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Buri, and in today's video I'm going to be talking a bit about the topic of social media, more specifically in terms of why I don't really like what it's become, and also I'm going to share a little bit about some of my own experience with using social media and why I've reduced it. Now, it's not to say that I am anti-social media, because obviously besides this YouTube channel, I do have an Instagram and I do have a TikTok. But nowadays, I find that I've outgrown a lot of platforms. I have no desire to have many platforms in my life anymore. And of course, in this video, I'm going to just sort of explain everything in detail. But before we begin, for once, I look decent on camera today because I did my hair, and I have a nice fascinator, and I have my Kiko Milano lipstick and my nails, so I actually look presentable because, as you already know, I don't really like showing my face on camera that much. For one, I'm insecure. Two, I get nervous when talking in front of a camera because I don't really have a script. I also have autism, so I'm not really good with communication and stuff like that. So I'm hoping, despite all these things, everything I say makes sense. So grab your wine. I know I have. Today's choice is a nice Merlot. I forgot what brand this is, but Merlot is one of my favourite wines. This is the second glass of wine I've had today because I had a nice Pinot Grigio blush when I went to a Thai restaurant earlier. So let's begin. Before that, okay, I feel a lot better now. Now we can begin. So, from my general understanding, right, social media was meant to be about communication. Social media was supposed to be an effective yet convenient way to communicate with the people that you cared about the most, including your friends, your family, and other loved ones like your partner. Now, the way social media has changed over the years, I don't really like it. I really don't like it at all, because I find that the way it's become, right, not only is it more uniform in the sense that you have a black on white layout, so black font / text on a white background, but the individuality and uniqueness of every platform has been sucked away. So it's almost as if all these social media giants are competing with each other to see who can garner the most attention from users. So they want as many users on their platforms, and one of the main ways in which these companies like to go about doing things is by implementing short-form content. So since TikTok came about, short-form content has become very popular, and I will say this as someone that does content creation anyway, because I have this channel and I have TikTok obviously, although I only occasionally post content because, as you already know, if you don't, I do have a full-time job, so I don't really post every day. I only post on weekdays if I'm off work or if I'm bored at work or something. But going back to my point, short-form content is very popular on social media, so you have lots of people who can literally spend hours just scrolling on short-form content. And one thing I notice is that a lot of people have reduced attention spans when browsing short-form content, because when you're scrolling through it, right, you notice that there's all this imagery just coming up at once. So sometimes you might have two images in like a split screen simultaneously playing. And I actually saw this once when I went to KFC to get food, and there was like a 3-year-old child sitting in a pram with her parents' phone watching a split screen video. And it was just very depressing to see that. And the sensory overload, maybe it's because I'm autistic, I don't know, but the sensory overload would just kill me because I don't really like that type of content, and I would just feel like it's too much. So where short form content is concerned, these are the only things that a lot of people can focus on. Most people nowadays can't even focus on one thing for a long period of time. So you have people that don't even read books because it gets boring for them. I mean, I love reading anyway, so I can sit on a desk reading for hours on end. The same thing applies to my crafting. So I mean, for example, I'm going to show you, just hold on. Okay, so for example, right, I made this Galaxy Buds case for my Galaxy Buds FE. This case took me 2 hours to make. Some of my colleagues at work have seen it and they say that I have a lot of patience, because when I'm creating art, I can literally sit down for hours just gluing charms individually onto a clear case, which was exactly what I did for this. So the point I'm sort of explaining, right, is I'm a person who, if I like to do something, I can sit down and focus for long periods of time. But not everyone is like that, because people are so used to viewing short form content, it gets to a point where they can't really do much else. And I think another thing that's very depressing about social media is how people act, because I notice nowadays that when people post videos, there's hardly any context, because half the time, most people just kind of have this way of storytelling, which really isn't good. So I guess what I'm saying is you have little bits and pieces of certain stories that are missed out, because these people want to create a certain narrative because they want to get sympathy or whatever. I don't really like doing that. You know, when it comes to talking on YouTube or even talking on my podcast, everything I say is true to who I am, because I don't really want to change myself for people. I am sick and tired of doing that. I've already had enough of trying to do that in my life, especially as I've grown up with autism, so there you fucking go. But my point is, people want to display a certain narrative, and on top of this, as I mentioned in my last video where I talked about why I don't really like people, when you express certain viewpoints on social media that don't align with what is approved by the majority, you get attacked with vitriol. So again, using the cheese example, if you said you hated blue cheese because it was too salty on Twitter, people just attack you because you don't like blue cheese. And then you are pretty much dragged down by a mob just because you don't like blue cheese. And this is where we are with social media. People just act immature for no reason. People love to argue. People love to create drama. And it just makes me think, why are you doing this? And by the way, this is one of the few reasons as to why I've reduced social media. So in terms of my experiences with social media, I've been on it on and off for well over 10 years. So I first started getting into it in 2012 when I was a secondary school student. So 2 years prior, I remember getting my first smartphone in 2010. So the smartphone I got was a BlackBerry Curve 8520, and if you were around as a teenager, you will probably be aware of how popular these phones were, because in my secondary school, which was an all-girls school, almost everyone in my year had one of these phones. If it wasn't the BlackBerry Curve 8520, it was the BlackBerry Curve 9300, because the Curve models were cheaper. And one of the main applications that I would use along with my peers or friends was, of course, BBM, also known as BlackBerry Messenger, which is now the defunct or obsolete messaging app, if that makes sense. So this was kind of like the equivalent of iMessage minus the ability to do video calls, because Blackberries didn't really have a selfie camera, so you can do video calls. You could take videos using the back camera, you just couldn't do the calls. So with BBM, you could pretty much use it to message your friends. So, you could create a nice little profile picture with your name as well as your status. And if you had music apps installed, you could even go as far as, displaying the music you were listening to and all your friends could see it. And the way you would invite friends to be added was through a QR code. So every BlackBerry phone had a unique QR code that you could scan, or you would have a unique 8-digit BBM PIN. And once you added somebody, they were in your contacts. And you could even do groups where you could converse with up to 30 people, which was actually a huge thing because you didn't really have a lot of apps that were able to do that. But going back to my point, right? Once 2012 came, that was where I got into social media because BBM was slowly being phased out, and a lot of people I knew in school were starting to get Facebook accounts. And I remember asking my mum if I could have a Facebook account because back then I didn't want to sort of be the only person who never had Facebook because it was really trendy, it was popular, and obviously if something's popular at school, you want to be a part of that. So I remember, to continue, asking my mum if I could have a Facebook account, and she was very skeptical because obviously I was 12 years old, so I was a few days away from turning 13, and I remember really wanting to get Facebook because most people in school had it. So, she gave in, she allowed me to have an account, but the only thing was that I could only use it when she was present or when my dad was present, because obviously I was just going into my teens, and when you're going into your teen years, you're kind of in that stage where you're trying to sort of find yourself. So I guess being an autistic girl as well, I was kind of in that position where in school I was trying to sort of find myself and also, I guess, fit in because being autistic, if you're growing up as a child or as a teenager, it's very difficult to be accepted. And, it took me a long time to sort of begin to be okay with who I am as a person. Even now, it still takes time because there are parts of myself that I honestly don't fucking like. So once I got Facebook, let's just say that I ended up slipping into an addictive spiral on social media because I started getting other platforms like Twitter, Instagram, I think I had Snapchat at one point, Kick, Vine, etc. And I even had a lot of instant messaging platforms such as iMessage, FaceTime, Facebook Messenger, all those kinds of things. So I had a lot of these platforms, I was using them on a regular basis, and I remember as well when I was using these platforms, there were times where I would have school the following morning, and when I was supposed to be sleeping, I was on social media because I used to have my phone charged beside my bed on the floor because I didn't really have a proper bedside table. So I used to have my phone charged beside me, and I used to spend hours just going on these bloody platforms. And I remember being heavily addicted to social media. I was so addicted to the point where I couldn't do without my phone, and that is very bad, especially because now I'm actually okay with leaving my phone at home. So if, say, I'm going out with my dad or like we're going to a restaurant, I do leave my phone at home more often, and I just engage in conversation. And I realize that now, compared to my teens, I do have a great attention span because I'm more aware of my surroundings, which is very important to me because not only do I want to know what's going on around me, I want to be present with the people that I care about. I want to listen to what they're saying. I want to engage in conversation. And I notice I remember a lot of things as well. I mean, if I do have my phone, I do take photos and things like that, but that's more so because I have recently been getting into scrapbooking. So I have a physical scrapbook that I keep at home now, and every time I go to different places I've never been to, or there's different foods I've never tried, I put it in my scrapbook. I have my digital journal as well, because I like to keep photos for my journal, for memories, and I do share food pictures occasionally and things like that on Instagram. So yeah, going back to my point, because this is the bit where I realise I'm going off into a bit of a tangent. This is going to be a habit. I'm really sorry, I don't know. I had a really huge addiction to social media, and let's just say it was not good. It was not good. So I think once I started college, I remember in 2016, 2017, when I was in my second year of college, I kind of started to have a bit of an epiphany in a sense, because I began to realise that social media was not really as great as I thought it was. So I remember slowly deleting a lot of my accounts. There were a couple of occasions where I would, remake new accounts. So, I did that a lot for Twitter, did that a lot for, I think, Instagram. Although with Instagram, I rebranded and pretty much just made one account where I post my art, which I still have, but that's most likely going to be archived because, to be honest, I don't really post art much anymore. I do have a personal Instagram that I use to post food pictures, but I keep that privatized for my own personal reasons. And there are certain things that I don't really want to post on social media personally, again, for personal reasons. So certain things like where my job is concerned, I wouldn't post that, especially because the type of work I do, involves being around vulnerable individuals. And I don't really want to put people at risk, let alone myself. So you will hardly hear me even talk about my job, besides the fact that, I do a full-time job as a receptionist and stuff like that. That's as much as I'll mention, really. But going back to my point where my social media addiction was concerned, during my college and also my university years, I actually deleted a lot of platforms. I did remake a few things. At one point, or 2 points, I think, I joined Discord, then I deleted that because I didn't really like it, and I had a shitty experience once that I don't really want to get into, and it just made me feel uncomfortable. So yeah, but I noticed that looking back in my teens as well, there were certain social media experiences I had which made me feel very uncomfortable. So, when I used to engage in like anime role playing in my teens, when I was at my lowest point because I was a depressed individual, certain messages and things which were exchanged, I think about it sometimes. I just kind of realize, this really isn't normal. It's just not. And one thing that really concerns me where social media is involved is the fact that you do have a lot of children who have easy access to it. I mean, now that tech is more developed and children are smart in the sense that they can bypass age verification, it's very concerning to know how many children, especially girls, have access to social media at a young age. Not only in the sense that it can be very damaging to a person's self-esteem, but also in the sense that children in particular are very vulnerable, and children are more likely to be involved in situations where they're being taken advantage of. And it's even worse when you have depression or low self-esteem, because people like to prey on that. They like to, drill in negative auras or negative energies. And for me personally, it doesn't sit very well. And it's the same thing with having children having access to smartphones, if that makes sense. I mean, when I was a child in the 2000s, I did have a phone, but it was a basic Sony Ericsson flip phone that my mum gave to me, because there was no way she would have let me have a smartphone when I was like 6 or 7 or 8 years old. There's no way that would have happened. And now you have kids with iPhones and they're watching all these YouTube videos. I mean, sometimes when I go home from work, I see kids watching like Cocomelon and things like that, and it's very concerning. I mean, I have an Italian friend, right? born and bred Italian. He works as a teacher, and even he's seen stuff like that where you have like little kids watching Cocomelon and all sorts of cartoons with very, strange imagery, and it's just very damaging for children. It's so damaging because their attention span is delayed. They can't read, they can't write, they can't even do maths. It's just depressing knowing this is happening, and I'm just thinking, what the hell is going on? Like, why is this normalized? Although I suppose it's because sometimes parents find it easier to pacify their child with tech. I mean, if they're crying or something, it's just easier to do that. Because I've seen that in a restaurant before. When I went to a restaurant with my mum a few months back, I've actually seen it with my own eyes. I'm just thinking, what the hell? Like, what is this? What is this? Seriously. But in terms of where I'm at with social media, I have it, but half the time it's like I don't acknowledge it. Well, at least where Instagram is concerned, especially with my art account, the app is there and I just like go on it when I feel like it, but I don't really spend hours just browsing all these platforms anymore. I really don't, because more than 10 to 15 minutes is just too much for me. So, I mostly watch YouTube videos, but I like to focus on content of interest. And the content mostly includes things to do with mental health, finance, tech, customization. And I like to listen to music as well, because I have a lot of playlists for video game music I loved in the 2000s, things like that. But besides that and content creation, I've been getting back into my creative roots again. So I've recently been getting back into drawing, and I'm going to show you some drawings that I made in a sketchbook. Just hold on. So, as I was saying, I've been getting back into drawing again. So these were some drawings, if you can see on the camera, that I recently made about a week ago. So this is supposed to be Ishiko and Momoko from the manga/movie Kamikaze Girls. I haven't watched the live action movie yet, but I read the manga and I love their characters. You have a Yankee or Sukeban girl who is pretty much like a tomboy, and this cutesy Lolita girl who pretty much become friends, and they're trying to find like a shop or something. I can't even remember what the plot was, but I just love the manga. And speaking of manga as well, I've actually been getting back into reading manga. So right now I'm just talking about what I've replaced social media with. So I've been reading a lot more. So yeah, I've been reading mainly a few books here and there. I've been listening to audiobooks. So the main audiobook I've been listening to right now is Quiet by Susan Cain. And I've also been reading some manga, as I mentioned. So the main manga I'm currently reading is Sayuki. And my favorite characters in it so far are Genjo Sanzo and Cho Hakai, because they're hot. And also because Sanzo, he is my type of priest. He is absolutely my type of priest or monk or whatever. He smokes, he drinks, he swears, he shoots. There you go. I love him. There you go. And besides that, as I've mentioned, I have also been doing my scrapbooking again. So I usually like to take photos, and I use my Zoe Mini printer, which has nice little chromey stickers, which I got from, I think it was Etsy. And I print the photos on my zinc paper and I put them in my scrapbook. So that still needs a bit of updating, but I think it's up to date so far. Then I've been getting into decadent art and resin art. So let me show you my cases. This is the latest phone case that I made. This one took me 45 minutes to do, and I'm sorry, I think the lighting is a little bit screwy, but this is what the case looks like, and this is my favorite so far. And I made 3 more cases for my phone because I don't want to buy cases anymore. I want to make them, and I do have some orders coming in soon from colleagues at work, so I'm gonna basically do it as a side hustle. So this is my second favorite case. It's like a mermaid style one, and this was the first ever resin case I made, but I was surprised about the result, and I like this one. And this one is a cutesy pink and purple case that I made with like chocolate and bunnies and shit. Yeah. So yeah, I've been getting back into art now. So will I ever delete my remaining social media platforms? Well, if I do, I'll probably end up deleting Instagram at some point, because honestly I've been thinking about it. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's definitely gonna happen. So yeah, well, anyway, I think that's all I want to say, because this video is getting quite long, so I feel hungry. I hope you enjoyed it and you enjoy my slight rant. Enjoy your wine, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you in another video. And one more thing. This is also what I've been up to in terms of more resin art. So this is another Galaxy Buds case, because I have 2 pairs of Galaxy Buds. So these ones I use at home. That's by Galaxy Buds 3 Pro, by the way. And these ones, which I showed you earlier, I use these when I go to work. So these ones I usually leave in my work bag. But this is my favorite case so far. This case matches the other one. So it's got guns, it's got money. It's a bit ironic because, you know, with my job. But this is the same job that, to be fair, allows me to wear spike boots to work. But this is cute. So, thank you. And bye for now, I guess, because I'm hungry. And as Serena van der Woodsen says, and I quote from Gossip Girl, I have to go. I have to go.